I've lost 25 pounds in 16 weeks, mostly fat. Let me show you how I prioritize retaining as much muscle as possible in an aggressive cut. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the end of week 16. You might hear it in my throat. My voice is kind of a little hoarse today. I don't feel too bad, but I am definitely a little under the weather. Got a little drainage going on. I'm still gonna get a workout in. I'm not gonna push it too hard, but we are gonna do it. It is week 16, day 5, which is our moderate pull day. If you've been following any of the videos this week, on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, I found my 1 rep max for bench press, deadlift, and squat. So Wednesday and Friday, I was planning on doing a little bit lighter anyway because of the heavy stimulus from those 1 rep max days. And then just with this little bit of cold that I've got, I'm gonna take it even easier today. But I feel good enough. My body feels fine. I don't feel achy or sore or anything like that. So I'm still gonna get a good workout stimulus today. Today we're gonna talk about the cut that I'm on. It's a 20-week cut and we're nearing the end of week 16. And looking at the numbers, in total I've lost 26 pounds. That's total. If you look at the weekly averages, it's like 23 pounds, which is still pretty good. Either way, it's about 1.5 pounds per week. So we started out really aggressive at 2 pounds per week. We've leveled off. Some of our weeks now are closer to 1 pound. But what that does for our average for the whole cut is average out to about 1.5 pounds. And I've been doing my weekly updates every Monday. I do a physique update. And so we can see what the progress, what that looks like. And I think that you can see, hopefully, that I haven't lost a ton of muscle. At the end of the cut, I will go back and do another DEXA scan, so we'll be able to quantify exactly how much muscle I've lost. But I've been doing, I'll talk about what I've been doing to retain as much muscle as possible during this cut while prioritizing burning fat and doing it in an aggressive way so that I originally wanted to lose 40 pounds over 20 weeks. I'm hoping now that we can get to 30. So I think the results so far are already going to speak for themselves. We have another 4 weeks to go. And I'm going to talk about what I've been doing this whole time and what I'm going to continue to do, and talk about what I'm going to do after this cut to maintain my muscle and either cut a little bit more or bulk, or do, how I'm going to decide what to do after that. Be sure to stick around for the whole video. At the end of my workouts, I always do a daily check-in, and we look at my weigh-in for the day and how that affects my average for the week and how that compares to my other weekly averages, so we can see what my progress for the cut looks like. And we also look at the nutrition from the day before, so we can see how I'm trying to meet my deficit needs, my calorie deficit, and also hit my protein targets. And I'm giving away the video right there, guys. That's how do you lose weight in an aggressive cut, calorie deficit, and protein. We'll talk more about it. There's more to it, but that's one of the biggest pillars of this whole thing. But I just want to emphasize that if you want to see exactly what I eat in a day to hit these targets that we're going to talk about soon, I do this every video, every workout, and I show you. I pull up my weight tracking app, I pull out my calorie tracking app, and you can see the food that I've eaten. And if that's helpful, please let me know. If you would rather see what I eat in a day, where I show the actual meals rather than the calorie tracking app, let me know that in the comments too. And as always, if these videos are helpful or interesting, please like and consider subscribing to the channel, because we've got another 4 weeks to go. So it should be a fun ride to see if we can get down to 180. Plus, another fun bonus thing this week, I've been talking about how I signed up for a powerlifting meet last minute. So we've got 4 weeks left in the cut. We've got 3 weeks left until the meet. So that meet is the weekend before the last week of the cut. So that'll be fun too, because the next couple of weeks of training, we're going to alter slightly to help us prepare for that meet. And hopefully the cut that we're on is going to help us get down to the weight division that we signed up for, because I signed up for 82.5 kilograms, which is, I don't know, somewhere between 181, 182 pounds. And as you'll see, my weigh-in today was 184. So I've got a little bit of ways to go. So there's a little bit of suspense thrown in here for you guys. You're going to be able to see it in real time, whether I crush it or fail. Gotten in a bad habit of forgetting to tell you what the workout is. So our moderate pull workout, we start with lat pull downs on the cable machine behind me. Then we'll do chest supported incline dumbbell rows. We will do single arm cable rows, seated incline dumbbell curls, and we'll finish with some dumbbell pull overs. So let me get this set up and we'll start. Actually, first thing we're going to do is warm up. On a moderate day like this without big kind of compound thing, I just like to hang. I like to hang and stretch out my back. I do a few scap pull-ups, which are just kind of like little half pull-ups down here. And then I do a couple of pull-ups. And that'll be a good warm-up for us going into lat pull-downs and a pull day. We'll rest a couple minutes and we'll do that warm-up routine one more time before we jump in. One more warm-up set. Feel free to fast forward through these if it's boring for you, but I show it all. All right. You want to get shredded, you want to build muscle, or you have some muscle, you want to retain it, but you want to lose fat and get down to a lower body fat percentage. How do you do it? Guys, there's 3 principles that I follow. The first is your nutrition, eating in a calorie deficit, and we'll talk about what goes into that, while prioritizing a high protein intake. So most of your calories are going to come from protein, and you're going to be eating less calories than what it takes to maintain your weight. Second one is weight training. Your muscles are going to be encouraged to stick around if you are resistance training and using a method called progressive overload to push yourself each week. And then the last principle is rest and recovery. And if you are not getting enough sleep, if you are not giving yourself recovery days, it doesn't matter how much you do the first 2. Your body is just not going to be able to maintain that muscle or even really want to be healthy, or you're not going to feel good. So you need all 3 of these things to be able to shed fat and maintain muscle. I'm not saying that you can't lose weight if you don't do all 3 of these. I'm saying if you want to get a lower body fat percentage and a higher muscle content, these are the 3 things that you need to do. You can lose weight by just doing one or the other or something like that, right? Anyone can lose weight. You can get on a GLP-1, not weight train. You can jog and do cardio. You will shed pounds, but you will also shed muscle. So you can build muscle while you're in a calorie surplus, but you're going to be gaining fat as well. You're not going to lose weight if you're eating more calories. And you're going to have a hard time doing anything if you're not getting rest and recovery. So now that we've gotten the 3 principles out of the way, let's get our first working set. We've got 150 pounds on lat pull down. I think we're shooting for 10 normally. What's in my pocket? But I might do a little less. And I might do a little less today, just to keep the volume lower. We'll do 8. Let's break down each of those principles and to try to understand them a little bit better and what it might look like for you. Obviously, I don't know who you are exactly and what your specific attributes and goals are, so I'll just talk about what I have done. So let's focus on the calorie deficit part. I have some other videos I encourage you to check out for the first two, for nutrition and for weight training. If you are looking for advice and how for a plan that works for you, check out my videos on how to use free AI tools to do it. I don't really have an AI tool to help you rest and recover. Just get sleep. But the middle one, I guess, the recovery, is kind of built into the AI tool for helping you plan your weight resistance training plan. It makes sure that you're not overtraining. So I would encourage you to check that out if you're looking to find out what your calorie needs are. Try my video and try using a free AI tool like ChatGPT. But the long story short, you need to figure out what your total daily energy expenditure is. This is what people refer to as their maintenance calories. And maintenance calories are what your body needs to neither gain weight or lose weight, and whether that's muscle or fat. So if you are wanting to lose weight, you need to eat less than your maintenance calories. And so typically about to lose 1% of your body weight. So for most of us who are somewhere around 200, you're 150 pounds to 220 or something like that, you're talking about half percent, I should say, 0.5% of body weight. 500 calories is a good place to start. You should be able to see meaningful progress on the scale. So that's about a pound a week if you're around 200, right? 200 pounds, a pound a week. And then if you want to really prioritize maintaining muscle, a smaller deficit, so 250 to 300 calories. And then if you want to go more aggressive with the risk of losing more muscle, you can go up to 1,000 calorie deficit. And that's going to be closer to that 2 pound per week. That's where I started. I'm still trying to eat those calories, but my metabolism has adapted a little bit to where my 1,000 calorie deficit is no longer 1,000 calories. It's more like 700 calories. So I'm only losing 1.5 pounds now. But I need to get this next workout. So I'll just to sum it up. Nutrition for a calorie deficit, find your total daily energy expenditure. You can ask ChatGPT, check out my video. You just tell it your age, your weight, your sex, your activity level, stuff like that, and it will calculate that for you. If you're interested in finding a more accurate representation of what your TDEE is, I've got a video on that too. You can use your data if you've been tracking your calories and your weight for a long time. You can use your data in ChatGPT to figure out your real-time, very accurate total daily energy expenditure. So once you know your total daily energy expenditure, if you want to lose weight, eat less calories than that. So when I started out, my TDEE was 2,900. If I wanted to lose a pound a week, I would have cut that down to 2,400 calories per day. I started out at 1,900 calories, a 1,000 calorie deficit, because I wanted to go aggressively and lose 2 pounds per week. And the risk with going with the bigger the deficit, the more risk of muscle loss there is. And the bigger the deficit and muscle loss risk, the more important it is for you to do the next part, which is get a high amount of protein and resistance train. And we'll talk about those next. All right, second set, lat pull down. Next up, let's talk about protein. There are a lot of different methods, rules of thumb for protein The most common one is to say, get 1 gram of protein for every pound of body weight. You weigh 200 pounds, get 200 grams of protein per day. You weigh 250 pounds, 250 grams of protein per day. 150 pounds, 150 grams. You get it, right? Pretty easy math. The reason that works is it's easy to understand and to see if you're hitting that or not. Whether or not it's 100% accurate really kind of depends on you as a person, because really what it comes down to is the more accurate way is to figure out your lean body mass, because really what you need to figure out is how much muscle mass you have, and that is the most accurate way to determine how much protein you need. The formula that was used to come up with 1 pound for 1 gram per 1 pound, it works for most body fat percentages, but kind of falls apart if you have a really high body fat percentage or if you're on the lower side. So it's kind of meant for people in the middle. So you're in that 15 to 20%. That being said, I like going off of lean body mass if you know it. If you know your body fat percentage, I have a video talking about different ways to measure body fat percentage. DEXA is kind of one of the gold standards, but really the 4-compartment method where you use a DEXA scan, electroanalysis, mod pod, and I'm forgetting one. That's the real gold standard because it uses a bunch of different methods to get your bone mass, your fat mass, your total volume, and your water mass, and then it can actually get a much more accurate than even DEXA on its own. There are scales, there are calipers that you can do where you pinch. You can do the Navy method where you just measure different things, but none of them are too far off. You're going to be a few percentage points off. So what I'd say is if you know your body fat percentage, then that is a good place to start to find your fat-free mass. And then you can use that to get a more accurate protein target. So I want to say it's 1.2 grams of protein for a pound of lean body mass. So for someone like me, it ends up being probably about the same, doing 1 pound or 1 gram of protein per pound of total body weight versus 1.2 grams of protein per lean body mass pound. That's hard to say. It ends up being about the same. So I think I'm shooting for 180 grams of protein. Right now I weigh about 184, 185 pounds. My lean body mass is probably 156 pounds because I'm probably about 16 or 17%, maybe 15%. We'll see. I think my fat distribution must be favorable to start showing my abs sooner than other people because I think I am a higher body fat percentage than what I look. I'll just say that. Let's wrap this up. Protein. You need to get a lot of protein. And because it helps protein synthesis, muscle synthesis, right? And so if you're a newbie, if you're new to weight training, you can actually be in a slight calorie deficit and gain muscle if you're getting enough protein. And if you are an experienced lifter and you don't qualify for newbie gains anymore, you need protein to help resource, let me just put it that way, to help give your muscles the resource and your body the resources it needs to convince it that it can hang on to the muscle, right? So the more aggressive your cut, the more important it is to prioritize high protein. We talked about that earlier. So if you are shooting for 2 pounds a week, if you're in 1,000 calorie deficit, I would definitely aim on the higher end of the protein goal. The smaller your deficit is, the less important it becomes. And then as you're in a calorie surplus, you just want to be getting a base amount of protein. You don't have to maximize it, but you still want to be getting an adequate amount. Protein by itself is not enough to maintain your muscle. You also need to be resistance training, and we'll talk about that next. All right, let's get our last set of lat pull downs. This is the point where some of you might be going, whoa, AJ. You talked about calories. You talked about one of the macronutrients, protein. What about the other two? What about carbs and fat? Certainly, those factor in to losing weight and maintaining muscle. And I would say, yes, technically they all interplay with each other. What I will say is there are varying opinions on whether you should eat more or less fat or carbs, right? And I am definitely not in favor of one side or the other, right? I am not going to advocate for a high fat, low carb diet, and I'm not going to advocate for a high carb, low fat diet unless you have a very specific goal and a reason. So I would say if you're a bodybuilder or if you're a power lifter, you can manipulate fat and carbs to help with you maintain different goals at different stages in your plan, right? So as you are in an off season, kind of like strength building phase versus competition prep and like even like a week of competition, you can certainly manipulate and do different things with your fat and carbs to help you do the best that you can. For most of us, for people like me who just want to look almost jacked, we want to look moderately shredded, better than the average Joe, it doesn't matter. It doesn't freaking matter. That's a hot take. But guys, if I focus on calories and protein and I let the carbs and fat fall where they may, and some weeks it might be a little more carbs, some weeks it might be a little bit more fat, in the long run, it all just is a wash. It all just evens out. And as long as I'm doing the other three things that we're talking about, as long as I'm in a deficit, I'm getting protein, and I'm weight training and getting recovery, the fat will go away and the muscle will stay. No, shoot, I messed it up. Well, I apologize. I missed my second set of rows because, I don't know, I messed up my hitting record and stuff like that. So you're going to miss the second set. Sorry about it. But the other thing that you missed is I talked about, I can't even remember what I talked about. We talked about nutrition, we talked about, I think it was weight training. I think that's what I wanted to get to. If we were talking about, I said a lot, guys. I'm so sorry you missed it. If you're new to weight training, shoot for 2 to 3 times of weight sessions per week. Have ChatGPT help you plan it out. It's really important that you get recovery days, that you're not training the same muscle back to back. It's also important that you have days off. So shooting for 2 to 3 days is a really good way to make sure you get that right off the bat. And then it'll matter less what split you pick. I like a push-pull legs. Some people like a full body. Some people like upper-lower split. Some people like a bro split where you hit individual muscle groups each day. Doesn't really matter as long as you're getting the rest and recovery you need and you're getting the overall volume that you need. Volume simply means the amount of weight and the amount of times you're lifting that weight per muscle group, right? So that's where a tool like ChatGPT can be really helpful because it can program a plan that gives you the adequate volume for your experience level and make sure that you're recovering too. Now, the reason that resistance training is so important and the reason, and I don't really understand why it's so controversial when it comes to weight loss. Weight training allows your muscles, the way I think about it is it convinces your body that it needs muscle, right? So it's almost like use it or lose it. If you are in a calorie deficit, and this is really big right now, I think this is one of the reasons why it's surfacing is because if you're on a GLP-1, like a Ozempic or something, and you're in a calorie deficit, you're losing weight, which is great. And it's easier than it would have been, which is great. And I think a lot of people can benefit from that. But if you're not also pushing and pulling heavy things, your body is willing to sacrifice muscle when it's in a calorie deficit. It doesn't view it as important. It's trying to burn calories from wherever it can. It'll certainly do that from fat, but it will also do it from muscle. If you are getting enough protein and you are pushing your muscles hard, your body, it's like it realizes, oh, I can't burn that. It's needed. We need it right now. We can't let it go. So it helps your body prioritize burning fat. I don't know all of the biomechanics of it, but that's the way, from what I've read and seen, that's a good way of explaining it, I think. So now, it's not a free lunch. You can't just lift a few weights here and there. The best way to make sure that you are pushing your muscles enough and not too hard, like I said, is to look at your volume overall for the week and your rest and recovery, but also to make sure that you're getting the same stimulus, because you will get stronger, you will adapt. So you will need to implement something called progressive overload. And I will explain progressive overload after this, because it's time for me to do the next set. And hopefully I will not screw it up and lose this recording and lose that recording like I did last time. All right, last set of chest supported rows. Sorry that I missed the second one. I know you're all very disappointed. Most of you won't even notice. Are we recording? Yes, we've got single arm rows. Here we go. What is progressive overload? The name's right there in the title. You are overloading your muscles progressively over time. That's a cop-out definition. Your stimulus needs to be perceived as the same or more every week in order to grow your muscle, to break down your muscle fibers so that they will recover and have muscle protein synthesis and grow. And also on the flip side, to retain the muscle. The simplest way to think about that is by adding weight or reps each week. And one of the simplest ways I have found to figure that out or calculate that is what we call the hard reps, the number of hard reps per muscle group. So that's one way of calculating your volume, because your volume, you can quantify that and you can make sure that that is slowly increasing over time, satisfying the requirements for progressive overload. Most people need somewhere between 10 to 20 hard sets per muscle group per week, right? So on the lower side, that's 6 to 10. In the mid, that's 10 to 15. On the higher end, when you're really going after strength training, that's closer to 20. So if you start in that 10 to 20 range, that will give you a baseline volume, right? Because you're doing bench, 3 sets of 4, 6, or something like that. You're doing your shoulder presses, that's another 3 sets. You're doing your overhead press, that's another 3 sets, right? So right there, your shoulders got, 6 hard sets, your chest got 3 to 6, depending on how you're calculating it. So you have your baseline volume, and then from there, you can calculate volume by total tonnage per the week. So you literally just add up the weights and multiply it by the number of reps that you did. I don't do that. I let my app do that. So that's really cool if you have an app that can track that. The other way is just to use what's called double progression overload. It's very easy. You set a rep range for yourself. So I like the strength lifting rep range for compound lift bench, 4 to 6 reps. So you set a rep range. You try to do, if you're doing 3 sets, you do 3 sets, 4. Great. Next week, you do 3 sets. Maybe you get 5. Maybe the next week, you're doing even better and you get 6 on one of them. You've reached the top of your rep range. Now you add weight. Could just be 5 pounds, 10 pounds, and you go to the bottom of your rep range. You start back over at 3 sets of 4. And you do that over and over again. Same thing on higher rep ranges. Maybe you are in that hypertrophy range from 8 to 12, right? So you're doing lateral raises. It's a slog. It's hard to overload these. So you start out with 8, and then eventually you get to 12, right? And then you try to bump up weight and you can't do it because bumping up even 5 pounds on lateral raises is insane. I'm joking. It's a hard one to overload. But the principle is the same. You have a rep range, a lower bound and an upper bound. You try to increase the number of reps each week if you can. Don't kill yourself. And when you get to the top of the rep range, immediately next set, whether that's that day or whether that's the next time you come to that lift, you increase the weight by a modest amount and go down to the lower bound of the rep range. So that's progressive overload. You want to be slowly increasing your volume. The reason we do that is your body adapts, right? Lifting 100 pounds today is not the same as lifting 100 pounds next week after you've done it one time. Your body adapts. Certainly your muscle grows, right? But you also, your central nervous system, your mind, muscle connection, other various factors, form, stability, your body adapts so that the same stimulus one week is not the same week over week. And so that's why we have to progressively overload. And this is nothing new. This is, if you've read the book, what was it called? Training Milo. There's this old Greek story about the premise, if you don't know about this, is the young man, he carries a baby calf, every day. And obviously as he grows and the calf grows, the calf gets heavier. And so that's like the first kind of story of using progressive overload because he becomes really strong, right? So this is not a new concept, but it is a very important one. And I think it is easy to leave out. It's easy to just do the same. I'm just going to do 135 pounds, 3 sets of 10 this week. I'll do the same thing next week. It's easy to get caught into a slog or a cycle where you're just doing that, where you're just punching the card, right? And it's really easy to do if you're not actively tracking. So I highly encourage you to at least be tracking it in a notebook, get an app. I've used the Stacked app before. It's a great free option. I just did a review of the Heavy app. I switched to that a few weeks ago and I'm really enjoying it. I think an app is probably the best way that most of us can track our progress and make sure we're overloading over time. I've beaten that dead horse. Let's move on. Okay, I think we're just doing 2 sets of these. So this should be the last set of single arm cable rows. Quick review. So far, we've gone over nutrition and resistance training. Next, we're going to talk about rest and recovery. Real quick review on nutrition and resistance training, though. We said you need to be in a calorie deficit and getting a high ratio of those calories from protein. We broke that down and said you need to figure out what your total daily energy expenditure is, otherwise known as your maintenance calories. Once you know that, you can track your calories and make sure that you're eating less than your maintenance calories. We said that 500 calories is a good place to start. That should be about a pound of weight loss for someone who's 200 pounds, give or take, right? It's about 0.5% of body weight per week. 1,000 calorie deficit would double that, or you can cut that in half and go to closer to a half pound of body weight, or 0.25% body weight at 250 to 300 calories. We said the more aggressive the deficit, the more important it is to prioritize protein, meaning that if you're shooting for a gram of protein per pound of body weight, you definitely want to be using that as a minimum and maybe going above that. Another way to measure your protein needs is to go off of lean body mass, and that's typically 1.2 to 1.3 grams of protein per lean pound of body mass. So for someone who's 185-ish pounds like me, about 16% body fat, I think the math comes out to be about 156 pounds of lean body mass times 1.2. I believe the math should come around to about 180 grams of protein. So I try to shoot for 180 grams of protein. If I get 200, great. I'm in a calorie deficit, so more is better. However, I don't beat myself up. I don't kill myself. I don't only eat boring food. Some days I get less. I've had 150 gram of protein days. I've had 100 grams of protein days. I try to avoid those, but they happen. I don't kick myself. I don't get down. I just the next day try to get my 180 grams again. So we talked about nutrition. We talked about resistance training. We talked about how getting a high amount of protein does not guarantee that your body will hold on to muscle while you're in a deficit. You also need to convince your body to hold on to the muscle by using that muscle, by giving it a hard stimulus, by pushing and pulling heavy things. We talked about progressively overloading because your body adapts to the same amount of weight over time, and you get stronger whether you're building muscle or not. So it's really important to be increasing your volume slowly over time, and the best way that I have found that is to get somewhere between 10 to 20 hard reps per muscle group per week, and then to use double progressive overload, or the double progression, where you shoot for a lower and upper bound rep range, like 8 to 12. And as soon as you get to the higher end of the rep range, you add weight and go to the lower bound of the rep range. So I think that covers everything we've talked about. We'll come back, and I know I've already eaten up all my time. We'll come back and we'll talk about rest and recovery. It's pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward. All right, let's get these curls real quick. I should lower the camera so you can see my muscles. My awesome muscles. Okay. Rest and recovery. It's what it sounds like. The biggest aspect of that is your sleep. Sleep is the number one time that our body is healing itself. That's when protein synthesis is happening for the most part. And it's also the number one thing I think most people miss. A lot of people will program their workouts so that they're not hitting muscle groups back to back. They'll make sure they're getting a day off here and there, but they'll be getting 4 hours of sleep. And I get it, have responsibilities. Maybe you've got your job, and that's 8 to 10 hours of your day. You've got to commute to work. You've got kids. You've got responsibilities outside of work and family. And then you have hobbies, and you try and squeeze those in. And then you want to watch your show, and you binge your show. And then all of a sudden, it's 2 a.m. and you've got to get up at 6 a.m. or maybe it's midnight and you have to get up at 4 a.m. I get how it happens. I would encourage you to try and take stock and inventory of your life, of your habits, of your time, and try to find if you can just try to add a couple hours here and there. If you're at 4 hours now, see if you can find 2 hours and get to 6. Really, man, 8 hours, that's the one. What is it, like 6 to 8 hours, I think is what they recommend. 9 hours is great too. I think that's where you're going to see the best benefit. Of course, everyone's body is a little bit different. So you may only need 6, you may need more like 9 or 10. But I don't think that anyone is enough of an anomaly that you only need 4 or 5. I think that is a myth that the American overwork culture has ingrained and glorified. I don't need sleep, blah, blah, blah. It's a myth, and it's a toxic culture that has been bred by corporate greed, in my opinion, without getting too political there. So try to get some sleep. Try to get 6 at the, if you're on the lower end. If you're already getting 6, dabble with 7. Dare you get 8? How audacious can you be, in getting 8 or 9 hours of sleep a night? Let me know how that goes. I also know that there are people who work odd hours, having different jobs at different requirements, and I don't really have much advice for you. If you're working the night shift, or if you're like a doctor or a fireman and you work 3 days in a row, and I don't know how that works. I'd love to hear from people who do have those jobs. I have a friend who's a fireman. I might reach out to him and find out how he does or doesn't handle getting enough sleep. So let's hit this next lift. We talked about sleep. We'll talk about the other recovery aspects. Second set of curls. All right. The other part of recovery simply comes down to your weightlifting routine. We talked about this earlier. You want to make sure that you are programming a routine where you're not hitting the same muscle group back-to-back days. You want to give your muscles at least a day off. Bigger muscles like quads actually need more. 2 days is actually preferable for a recovery period for those muscles. Smaller groups like your arms and stuff like that, really 12 hours, 24 hours is plenty. So a lot of the routines, the splits out there are based around this premise. The push-pull leg split exists because when you're doing your push exercises, then you go to the pull exercises the next day, there's not a lot of overlap in those muscle groups. And ideally, same thing between pull and leg. Pulling is mostly going to be upper body, and then your legs are obviously lower body. I like to do a push-pull, push-leg pull. All I do is I insert a day between my pull and my leg because I do a heavy deadlift on my pull day. And obviously deadlifts are going to use your posterior chain. It's going to use your lower body. So I like to give my legs another day to recover. So typically you see push-pull leg, and then you just start over push-pull leg again, or push-pull leg, push-pull leg, push leg, whatever the combination for hitting your 3, 4, 5, 6 days a week. And then there's upper lower body splits where you're literally just alternating between hitting upper body one day and lower body the next day. Obviously that works. You can do a full body split where you do your full body and then you take a day off and give your body recovery and then go the next day. And then there are what's called the bro split where you just literally hit one muscle group per day. So they would be chest, Tuesday would be back, and maybe Wednesday is legs or auxiliary shoulder, arms and stuff, and so forth. So there are lots of different splits and routines that have this idea of recovery built in. The one thing I would say is you would make sure that they're also building in not just back-to-back day recovery, but also full, complete rest days. So it's really important to have, at least one full day. If you're doing a push-pull leg routine for 6 days, definitely at least take one full day off to recover. I like 2 days. I work hard during the week. I like taking the weekend off and spending it with my family and doing other things. So I usually take the weekends off. Some people will take midweek off. Maybe they'll take Tuesday or Wednesday off, and then they'll take Saturday or Sunday off. I am a big advocate for 2 days off at minimum. 3 to 4 days off works too, though. There are a lot of people out there who are proponents of 2 to 3 days of working out is all you really need. And I can get behind that. I've done that for a time when I've been in a maintenance mode where I'll just do 3 days per week, and that gives you 4 days of rest, which is great. Plus, that also gives me days I can do other things. So in the summer, I may bump my typical 5-day workout down to 4 days or 3 days, depending on what the week looks like, what the weather looks like, because I like to golf. So I'll take Friday mornings off of working out to go golf. And that is an active recovery for me because I will walk 9 holes. And that's the other part of recovery, is I would say recovery is not just sitting on the couch and watching TV. Active recovery is a very real thing. So making sure you're getting 5,000, 10,000 steps, because that movement, that low intensity movement is really good. It helps with your blood flow, which helps with recovery. So don't just think that recovery is vegging out. Recovery can be active and should be active. And I think that's all I want to say about rest and recovery. Get your 6 to 8 hours of sleep. Take days off of working out and do other active activities that are good for you, but not super strenuous. All right, let's get some pullovers to end the day. We have talked through nutrition, resistance training, and rest and recovery, and how they all fit together for losing fat and either gaining or maintaining muscle mass. Hopefully it has been educational for you. If you have any questions about how to implement that specifically for you, check out my other videos. I would recommend the AI ones, where I talk about how to use ChatGPT to plan your nutrition, to plan your weightlifting routine. But also, feel free to just ask. Drop a comment. I'm happy to talk a little bit more about what your goals are and what you want to achieve. And stick around to the end of the video, because after this set of pullovers, I am going to go through my check-in, my daily check-in, where I'll show you my weigh-in for the day, what my average weight for the week is, how that compares to last week, and my overall goal. And we'll look at my nutrition from yesterday. We'll see what my calorie intake was, what my protein intake was, and how that is on target or not. And I will show you in the calorie tracking app so you can actually see the food. So you can see, I had 2 cups of this soup and it was this many calories, right? It's a very specific example of how you can track your food and what that looks like. So stick around for that. All right, let's get this last set of dumbbell pullovers and we'll check in. Daily check-in, let's do it. We weighed in right at 184 today. Yesterday was also 184. I think the scale said I went up 0.02 pounds, which is a wash. Now, at the beginning of the video, I said I've lost 26 pounds in total, and that's going by my absolute lowest of 184. So I think I started out at 210 minus 184, 26. But if you've been following my channel for a while, you know that I'm not a big fan of one day as a measure for what your weight is. I like to go on the average. So I'm averaging, let's call it 186 for this week. And that's honestly pretty generous because 190 is not very generous, right? My weekend was really high. I think my average will be below 186 this week. It's already there. Let's call it 186. And then if we go back to the start of the cut, 209, I think is what we'll say. So the week prior to the cut, the average was 209. So what did I say? 186, 209 minus 186, 23 pounds. And I think that's what I said at the beginning. I said 26 pounds for absolute weight. When we look at the averages, it's still 23 pounds. And if we divide that by 16 weeks, that's 1.4. That's almost a pound and a half. So what I said at the beginning of the video is not a lie. Oops, I stopped recording. Let me start recording again. What I said at the beginning of the video is not a lie. I have lost a pound and a half on average. Now, let's look at the calories and nutrition from yesterday. We ended up a little bit higher than normal, 2,400. At the end of the day, that's what got me. I was just really feeling like I needed some carbs. Well, I say end of the day, but really this 200 calorie blueberry muffin at the beginning of the day. My wife made muffins for the family and I couldn't say no. That also contributed. Other than that, it was a pretty normal day. A couple of David bar for breakfast, my coffee, lunch David bar, beef sticks, some rotisserie chicken, an orange, some chomp sticks, and a yogurt. Sea salt popcorn. That's pretty typical for me. It is a little higher, I think maybe because of the little bit more rotisserie chicken than I would normally have because I was finishing off the leftovers and the David bar might not be in there all the time. Sometimes I have popcorn, sometimes I don't. But still, 94 grams of protein for 856 calories is not too bad. Dinner was really pretty light, just a couple of cups of soup, and the tortilla chips obviously didn't help with the total calories. And then here's where you can see I had a graham cracker earlier in the day because I was hungry. I did have another David bar. Let's see. I entered a piece of bread because I had some leftover bread from my son. And then I did indulge in some M&Ms because I was just scrounging for snack food. And then I went and got my wife some queso dip for a snack because she really wanted some. And then I had some of those chips. So that's just like, I'm just being really honest and open. My target for the day was 1,500 and I went 900 calories over. It happens. Would I have liked to have been lower? Yeah, I think it's still okay. If we look at the other days, 1577, so 1,600, 1,800, 1,700. And yesterday was 2,400. If I can keep today 2,000 or below, I think we'll be in good shape. Let's look at the average. So my large calorie weekend, I'm still averaging 2,600. This is going to be way off because of today, but I think the average is still going to be okay. Now I can't afford to have another 2,600 calorie week. I do need to be closer to 2,000 or less. So really like that 16, 17, 1800 calories is really what I need to be shooting for, because I need to lose at least a pound for the next 3 weeks to make weight for the powerlifting meet. I think I can do it. And as you saw, my weigh-in today was 184. So I've got 3 weeks. Even if I just lose a pound, actual pound of body fat, if I can have the same water composition in 3 weeks and lose 3 pounds of fat, I'll be 181, right? And that's the goal. That's the target. So daily check-in, let's do it. We weighed in right at 184 today. Yesterday was also 184. I think the scale said I went up like 0.02 pounds, which is a wash. Now, at the beginning of the video, I said I've lost like 26 pounds in total. And that's going by my date, like my absolute lowest of 184. So I think I started out at 210 minus 184, 26. But if you've been following my channel for a while, you know that I'm not a big fan of 1 day as a measure for what your weight is. I like to go on the average. So I'm averaging, let's call it 186 for this week. And that's honestly pretty generous, because 190 is not very generous, right? My weekend was really high. I think my average will be below 186 this week. It's already there. But let's call it 186. And then if we go back to the start of the cut, 209, I think is what we'll say. So the week prior to the cut, the average was 209. So what did I say? 186, 209 minus 186, 23 pounds. And I think that's what I said at the beginning. I said 26 pounds for absolute weight. When we look at the averages, it's still 23 pounds. And if we divide that by 16 weeks, that's 1.4. That's almost a pound and a half, which, so what I said at the beginning of the video is not a lie. Oops, I stopped recording. Let me start recording again. What I said at the beginning of the video is not a lie. I have lost a pound and a half on average. Now, let's look at the calories and nutrition from yesterday. We ended up a little bit higher than normal, 2,400. At the end of the day, that's what got me. I was just really feeling like I needed some carbs. Well, I say under the day, but really this 200 calorie blueberry muffin at the beginning of the day, my wife made muffins for the family and I couldn't say no. That also contributed. Other than that, it was pretty normal day. A couple of David bar for breakfast, my coffee, lunch David bar, beef sticks, some rotisserie chicken, an orange, some chopsticks, and a yogurt, sea salt popcorn. That's pretty typical for me. It is like a little higher, I think maybe because of the a little bit more rotisserie chicken than I would normally have, because I was finishing off the leftovers, and the David bar might not be in there all the time. Sometimes I have popcorn, sometimes I don't. But still, 94 grams of protein for 856 calories is not too bad. Dinner was really pretty light, just a couple of cups of soup, and the tortilla chips obviously didn't help with the total calories. And then here's where you can see I had a graham cracker earlier in the day because I was hungry. I did have another David bar. Let's see. I entered a piece of bread because I had some leftover bread from my son. And then I did indulge in some M&Ms because I was just scrounging for snack food. And then I went and got my wife some queso dip for a snack because she really wanted some. And then I had some of those chips. So that's just like, I'm just being really honest, like, and open. Like, my target for the day was 1,500 and I went 900 calories over. It happens. Would I have liked to have been lower? Yeah, I think it's still okay. If we look at the other days, 1577, so 1,600, 1,800, 1,700, and yesterday was 2,400. If I can keep today, 2,000 or below, I think we'll be in good shape. So like, let's look at the average, how that, so my large calorie weekend, I'm still averaging 2,600. This is going to be way off because of today. But I think the average is still going to be okay. Now I can't afford to have another 2,600 calorie week. I do need to be closer to 2,000 or less. So really like that 16, 17, 1800 calories is really what I need to be shooting for, because I need to lose at least a pound for the next 3 weeks to make weight for the powerlifting meet. I think I can do it. And as you saw, like my weigh-in today was 184. So I've got 3 weeks. Even if I just lose a pound, like an actual pound of body fat, if I can have the same water composition in 3 weeks and lose 3 pounds of fat, I'll be 181, right? And that's the goal. That's the target. So it seems doable. 1 pound a week should be 500 calorie deficit. So that should be 2,000 calories. So my maintenance calories started out at 2,900 at the beginning of the cut. My metabolic adaptation has cut off about 400 calories of that. So we've been seeing about 2,500 calories as my maintenance calories lately. So if I can at least average 2,000 calories or less, I should see that 1 pound per week. So that's it for today. We've got 3 weeks to the powerlifting meet. We've got 4 weeks for the cut in general. And stick around for the rest of the journey and see if we make it. See you next time. Thanks.